Continuing from the previous part, where the battle between two Earth's all-powerful beings unfolds. In a fight where only one will survive, facing Steer, Ja-in still harbors a haunting fear of death. Though his hands tremble slightly, Ja-in remains steadfast in his determination to finish off Steer. Sensing his opponent's will to survive, Steer also shows some hesitation. Steer immediately threatens Ja-in by using Lisu's body. Unexpectedly, Ja-in now accepts that outcome, the death of Lisu. But Ja-in isn't the only one prepared in advance, Steer is too. She immediately uses her trump card. Raising her hand, she summons the infected people charging like a horde of zombies. Seeing Steer resorting to old tricks, Ja-in becomes somewhat complacent about the opponent's actions. But this time, it's different. Those people don't attack Ja-in. They charge straight at Steer, tearing it apart. Feeling something amiss, Ja-in rushes forward, but perhaps it's already too late. Before him are skeletons wrapped in flesh. From within, a blood-red hand with sharp claws thrusts straight at Ja-in. With just a gentle swipe, Steer tears through the entire house, sending Ja-in flying far away. In a moment, Ja-in rises from the rubble. However, facing him now is a completely different aspect of Steer. Its skin has turned purple, its eyes' whites turned black, and the red of bloodthirst now dominates. Looking astonishingly calm, Ja-in observes that Steer still contains Lisu within. Steer instantly transforms behind Ja-in, striking, but with Ja-in's millennia-old strength, he manages to dodge. And Ja-in retaliates with a thunderous punch, sending Steer crashing through several buildings. But because Lisu is still within, Ja-in refrains from finishing Steer off, instead threatening it with another punch. But this threatening punch proves too reckless, shattering the entire house behind. Thinking that this might truly intimidate Steer, Steer is observing Ja-in. It sees a stream of borrowed power, precisely the power of nature. Seeing his opponent unfair in the showdown, Steer once again summons the virus-infected horde to replenish its strength. Moreover, Steer reveals an interesting fact to Ja-in: the idea of enhancing its strength further belongs to Lisu, and what's more, Lisu herself despises humanity. The more power Steer absorbs from humans, the clearer Lisu's memories become. Lisu's family was once happy, her father was successful, and the family was harmonious. Still, as the saying goes, life is unpredictable. One day, her father's company went bankrupt due to betrayal from his colleagues. The family fell apart, everything seemed to end for Lisu. And precisely because of this, Lisu grew to hate humans. With her family bankrupt, she had to move back to the countryside to live and study. For someone accustomed to a life of luxury, these rural conditions were hard for Lisu to accept. Alongside that, society's darker side gradually revealed itself, the strong bullying the weak. Steer resonates with these thoughts in every letter. Back to the present, facing Ja-in is a version of Steer even more powerful. But therein lies the issue: Lisu inside is slowly disappearing. If left unchecked, everything will vanish. So Ja-in decides to use his trump card. Remember the early episodes? This is precisely the skill that creates earthquakes and tears everything apart. Having made his decision, Ja-in immediately stomped, creating an earthquake that shook the entire world. Around him, a magnetic field filled the air. But the weakness of this skill is staying in one place. So Steer easily lunged forward to punch Ja-in, sending him crashing through several walls. However, even hundreds of Steer's human vessels couldn't inflict any harm on Ja-in. Seeing no damage inflicted, Steer decides to play big, summoning hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands more to augment its power. But the more powerful it becomes, the more fragments of Lisu's memory surface. Since Lisu came here, there has always been a kid sticking around her. That's Youngtae, who once asked Lisu if there was a city in the clouds. Seeing Youngtae's seemingly dull question, Lisu responded nonchalantly, trying to brush it off. The next morning, a classmate came to ask Lisu about Youngtae, saying he hadn't returned home since yesterday. But the real reason was that Lisu had told him about the city in the clouds. She just pointed towards the mountains, where she wanted Lisu to accompany her to find Youngtae. Hearing this, Lisu initially refused but later felt a sense of responsibility and went with her friend to search for Youngtae. But speaking of friends, Steer is summoning crazily now. Surrounded by Steer's vessels, they charge madly. But within that crowd are Ja-in's friends, Donal and Okja. Just as Steer is about to absorb Donal's strength, a mysterious force suddenly stops it. Quickly realizing it's Lisu trying to intervene, Steer pauses. Upon further reflection, Steer recognizes them as their friends. Feeling it's becoming difficult to proceed with the fight here, Steer immediately launches all-out attacks on Ja-in and retreats. However, retreating for Steer doesn't mean fleeing. The five superpowers of the world, the USA, UK, Russia, France, and China, simultaneously ordered nuclear missile strikes on South Korea's Sejong City. Steer has truly turned the tables, forcing Ja-in to choose between human lives and Steer's existence. Meanwhile, in the USA, people realize the president is infected by Steer. But a gunshot ends any suspicions. Contrary to elsewhere, this gunshot isn't aimed at the lower ranks, they remain alert to Steer's threat. Luckily, there's only one missile heading toward South Korea. Meanwhile, Ja-in has completed his technique. It looks like an earthquake, but the shockwave Ja-in creates helps the virus-infected people break free from Steer's control. Resolving the difficult situation Steer created, Ja-in rushes at lightning speed toward Steer. Catching Steer off guard with his afterimage, Ja-in grabs Steer's face and slams it straight into the ground. Slowly draining Steer's life force, this action is precisely the suicide between Ja-in and his opponent. Steer is powerless against Ja-in's coercion. It's truly a class above Steer. But Steer's cunning intelligence is not to be underestimated. As Ja-in drains Steer's life force, images of devastation across the world become clear, and notably, a nuclear bomb is headed straight toward them. Steer had created a lifeline for itself. Ja-in found himself unable to achieve true balance with Steer because there were still people he had to protect. But if he stopped the atomic bomb, Ja-in would exhaust himself, giving Steer an opportunity to strike. Ja-in was truly caught in Steer's trap, unable to advance or retreat. Thus, Ja-in had to choose to intercept the atomic bomb. He and Kraken went to the East Sea and restrained Steer in one place. With his arrogance, Ja-in didn't even consider the danger of the bomb. He charged straight at it. Facing it, Ja-in created a column of water to penetrate the nuclear core. But he didn't understand the bomb's mechanism. He thought he could successfully stop it, but instead, he accidentally triggered the bomb to detonate prematurely. The explosion rocked the entire sea, and Ja-in himself was consumed by it. Fortunately, Kraken arrived in time to shield Ja-in partially. However, both of their fates ended in death. Steer swiftly seized the opportunity to strike Ja-in with a fatal blow to the abdomen. Ja-in could do nothing but endure it. However, with the power of nature, his body gradually began to regenerate. Seeing that his opponent couldn't finish him off in one blow, Steer kept strike Ja-in. But inadvertently, this connected Ja-in with Lisu. Seeing the current situation, Lisu still wore a warm smile towards Ja-in. And she took the initiative to hold Ja-in's hand and begin their final conversation. Quickly, they shifted to the mountain in Lisu's memory, where Donald and Lisu were looking for Youngtae. The scene of their childhood happiness contrasted sharply with Ja-in's grim reality. But Ja-in was greeted with a chilling revelation that Lisu truly didn't want to live. Returning to the main story, their false words had forged a deep bond between the three of them. Thanks to this friendship, Lisu truly healed after that crisis. But one day, the bully who often harassed Youngtae confessed his feelings to Lisu. And naturally, with her selfish nature, Lisu bluntly rejected him. The bully's torment of Youngtae worsened day by day and even extended to Donald and Lisu. The three of them had a heated argument about this issue. But with her selfishness, Lisu blamed Youngtae. Feeling sorry for himself, Youngtae decided to confront the bully despite his trembling limbs. He dodged the bully's attack and swiftly counterattacked, throwing him off the rooftop. The scene was witnessed by everyone, including Lisu. Although Youngtae faced his fear, his death was seen as murder. Family and friends mourned his death, but Lisu questioned herself if anyone blamed her. After that incident, nothing changed, evil still prevailed. And Lisu believed her life was over now. The remaining journey would be her paying the price. Just when she thought everything would be end, one day Lisu encountered Ja-in, a person with amnesia, someone who knew nothing about her. Youngtae's images kept appearing through Ja-in's shadow. And from that, a phrase of forgiveness became clear in Lisu's mind. In the end, that was all Lisu wanted to tell Ja-in because she was too tired now. She wanted to let go, and not be a burden to Ja-in. Returning to reality, Steer's punches were the lifeline through which Lisu could transfer the remaining life force to Ja-in. Just that small amount of life force truly helped Ja-in rise from the dead. But within Ja-in lay a fleeting sadness. Placing his hand on his chest, Ja-in was determined not to let Lisu down. Swiftly, he lunged at Steer, delivering a punch that seemed to come from the heavens. This time, Steer must have been thrown countless times in this segment. But overlooking that, Ja-in quickly chased after Steer. With the power of nature, with a gentle thought, Ja-in transformed into a coat and then delivered another punch straight to Steer's face. Left-right, smooth and steady. Oh, but wait a moment, upon reflection, Steer realized that it was now a parasite. It could fully control this body. A moment of silence within Ja-in was filled with Lisu's emotions and memories. He could feel the desire to live, a nobility greater than anyone else's. And the confrontation of the two most powerful entities in humanity continued. They kept colliding, each punch thrown with force. Everything now seemed like a battlefield, like a disaster. With each punch Jain took, he realized a few things. As humans, as apex creatures, we always make mistakes and fail, feeling regret and self-pity, only to find a solution. Jain now lacked the strength to fight back against Steer. He stood helplessly before Steer's pressure. Seeing his opponent seemingly devoid of the will to survive, Steer used his strongest blow to pierce straight into Jain's heart. Perhaps everything truly had come to an end. But this ending wasn't for one side alone. Jain held onto Steer tightly. Using the power of nature bestowed upon him, Jain returned the pressure. And unexpectedly, he gave Steer a kiss. But this kiss had its significance. Jain drained Steer's life force and exchanged it for Lisu's life back in its rightful place. Everything had ended, and Jain once again returned to the realm of souls, where he met Lisu once again. Seeing Jain's lips moving, "Just one thing, I like you." And Lisu woke up, facing her dear friend lying unconscious. Finally, Jain's life truly left this earthly realm. A long time passed, and life on Earth returned to its rightful orbit. Everything about Steer left behind a heavy consequence. Families, possessions, jobs, and so much more were lost. That anger was also directed toward Jain. Lisu could only helplessly accept this prejudice. But when she remembered Jain's confession, Lisu smiled. Lisu continued on the path of protecting the environment for Youngtae's and Jain's wishes. Reflecting on Jain's words, she wondered what Jain looked like now. But regardless, Lisu still wanted to meet him again. On the other hand, a familiar feeling, perhaps this time Jain would be reborn once again. But this time, there would be no pain. A sphere, a shade of green, it contained everything, able to see everything. In the end, that's how it was. Peace.